Before dawn, the capital shook. Not from protest. Not from an accident. From precision strikes that were never supposed to happen. Low over Caracas, jets roared. Explosions rolled through the city. And in that moment, a line that had held for years vanished. This wasn't a warning. This was something far more dangerous. And the ending of this story changes everything. People ran into the streets. Phones lit up. Power flickered. No one knew who was hit, or why. But here's what no one tells you. The targets weren't random. And the real objective wasn't Venezuela at all. Stay to the end, because what this operation actually signaled could reshape an entire region. Within hours, Washington confirmed it. U.S. forces had struck inside Venezuela. Not border zones. Not remote jungle. The capital itself. According to U.S. intelligence, cartel leadership was operating openly, protected, fortified, untouchable. Moving fentanyl. Moving cocaine. And moving with political cover. 4 years, the threat was words. This time, it was fire. And this is where everything changes. Caracas went into emergency mode. Air defenses activated. Security forces flooded the streets. Maduro called it aggression. State media screamed invasion. But U.S. officials told a different story. This wasn't regime change. This was decapitation. Cut the head. Let the body collapse. But here's the risk no one could ignore. Cartels don't surrender. They retaliate. Witnesses described it as surgical. Multiple strikes. Perfect timing. Almost simultaneous impacts. No carpet bombing. No chaos. Just leadership nodes, erased. Unconfirmed reports followed. Command centers destroyed. High-value figures possibly killed. And then came the silence. That silence is the most dangerous part. Regional leaders panicked. Emergency meetings. United Nations alarms. Because this wasn't just about drugs anymore. This was about precedent. A sovereign capital struck. Direct military force. No intermediaries. Was this a one-night message? Or the opening move of a campaign no one can stop once it starts? And while headlines focused on the explosions, the real power was already moving offshore. Quietly. Deliberately. At midnight, 3 U.S. destroyers slid into the southern Caribbean. Gravely. Jason Dunham. Samson. Aegis equipped. Missile loaded. Watching everything. This is where the story shifts from shock to strategy. These weren't symbolic deployments. Each destroyer carried eyes that see hundreds of miles. Radars linked. Data shared. Missiles ready. Helicopters armed. Boarding teams rehearsing in darkness. This was a net, not a hammer. Built to detect, track, intercept, and if ordered, to erase. Every sailor knew it. Every watch mattered. One mistake here could ignite something far bigger. Then came the part no one expected. 12 F/A, 18 Super Hornets launched into a Black Sea sky. No radio chatter. No announcement. Each jet carried one simple directive. Remove the enemy's safe place. What would you do if the mountain itself was about to turn against you? The target wasn't a building. It was a cave system. Carved deep. Reinforced. Designed to survive anything. That's why the weapon mattered. Blue, 109 bunker busters. Steel casings. Delayed fuses. Penetrate first. Explode later. Not loud. Not flashy. Just final. Pilots flew low. Formation tight. Ground rushing up fast. Then release. And the mountain answered. No fireball. No crater. Instead, collapse. Pressure waves ripped through tunnels. Stored munitions ignited. Supports failed. The blast didn't seal the entrance. It buried the entire system alive. The place meant to protect them became their grave. This was the message. There is no safe ground anymore. Sensors lit up. Heat spikes. Secondary detonations. Mission planners watched it unfold in real time. Then the jets turned home. No celebration. No speeches. Because everyone knew. This wasn't the end. It was denial of sanctuary. Here's the truth most people will miss. This operation wasn't about Venezuela. It was a test. A test of how far the U.S. is willing to go. A test of how fast it can strike. And a warning to anyone who believes geography still protects them. So the real question isn't what was destroyed. It's this. Who's next? Now that hiding is no longer an option. And when that answer comes, it won't arrive quietly. They didn't just target the enemy. They erased the mountain itself. No warning. No firefight. No second chance. And by the time the people hiding inside realized they'd been seen, it was already over. But here's what no one tells you. This strike wasn't about killing men. It was about killing options. Stay till the end. Because the final detail changes how modern war actually works. In modern war, hiding is survival. Caves. Tunnels. Buried chambers carved into stone. For decades, mountains meant safety. Air power could scare you, but it couldn't reach you. Or so they thought. Because once a place becomes a sanctuary, it becomes the most valuable target on the map. And removing that sanctuary can collapse an entire network without firing a single bullet. This mission wasn't about bombing a location. It was about making that location unusable forever. No shelter. No storage. No command hub. A war in the dark is a war of rooms and routes. Take away the rooms, and the routes collapse. But doing that required something terrifyingly precise. One mistake. One mistimed second. One misread laser. And the strike fails. The weapon had to penetrate deep, not explode on the surface. Pilots had to dive at exact angles. Fuses had to count milliseconds. Operators had to paint targets while standing close enough to die if they slipped. This is the most dangerous part. Because when precision fails, you don't get a second try. High above the mountains, a Super Hornet watched the darkness. Not with eyes. With heat. The A/SQ 228 targeting pod turned black rock into glowing truth. It didn't just see movement. It separated bodies from weapons. Fear from intent. 12 figures appeared, slipping through a crevice no human eye could reach. They thought they were invisible. They weren't. No one shouted. No one rushed. Invisible lasers painted invisible dots. Other jets saw the same picture, instantly. One aircraft tracked. Another confirmed. A third prepared to fire. No ground radio calls. No delays. Detection and destruction fused into a single moment. The bombs didn't scream in. They disappeared into stone. And then, the mountain spoke from the inside. Tunnels bowed. Supports failed. Pressure waves rolled through hidden chambers. Ammo cooked off. Exits collapsed. Escape routes vanished. There was no explosion to watch. The damage was internal. Permanent. When the jets climbed away, smoke rose in thin, quiet columns. But that wasn't the real result. The caves were dead. The base was dead. The plan was dead. Anyone who survived found no shelter. No tools. No future there. Years ago, this would have taken weeks. Mass bombing. Ground assaults. Heavy losses. This time, a dozen jets. One synchronized hour. Precision replaced attrition. Speed replaced spectacle. And collateral damage stayed low. Because force was focused exactly where it mattered. Sensors kept watching. Heat appeared again. A side tunnel. Survivors moving. Instead of leaving, the jets refueled in midair. No pause. No reset. Detect. Strike. Refuel. Strike again. Pressure without escape. This wasn't just physical destruction. It shattered command. Messengers buried. Leaders cut off. Orders stopped flowing. One node vanished. And the entire network fractured. In war, that ripple spreads faster than reinforcements ever could. Here's the part rarely discussed. This precision meant fewer ground troops walking into ambushes, fewer special forces sent to confirm danger face to face. Technology didn't just kill faster. It saved lives. On both sides of the decision. After the smoke cleared, the strike kept working. Data replayed frame by frame. Heat signatures mapped collapses. Seismic sensors confirmed what no camera could see. The explosion wasn't the end. It was intelligence. Fresh targets. Fresh pressure. Fresh control. There is no safe terrain anymore. Not mountains. Not deserts. Not buried bunkers. A carrier at sea can reach anywhere. Without permission. Without warning. The map has changed. This mission wasn't about firepower. It was about removing choices. When shelter disappears, movement becomes visible. And visible enemies don't last long. The most powerful weapon wasn't the bomb. It was certainty. So here's the question. If the sky can see everything, and the sea can move anywhere, they thought the mountain would protect them. Rock, trees, tunnels. They were wrong. Because somewhere beyond the horizon, a jet is already airborne. Bigger than it looks. Heavier than it should be. And carrying a weapon designed for what hides underground. But here's what no one tells you. This isn't just about a bomb. It's about timing. On aircraft carriers, pilots don't call it the Super Hornet. They call it the Rhino. Because it grew into the role. Stronger. Tougher. More lethal than anyone expected. And this is where everything changes. The Rhino isn't just built for dogfights. It's a flying toolbox. Heavy bombs. Long range. Sharp turns. It can patrol for hours. Then strike the same night. Targets don't just hide in cities anymore. They hide under rocks. Behind trees. Inside mountains. Twin engines push it fast enough to cross miles of hostile air. And fast enough to escape when things go wrong. Swept wings. Sharp angles. A jet that can turn when missiles are already in the air. But speed isn't the real weapon. The real power is what the pilot sees. Radar. Targeting pods. Computers stitching the battlefield into a single picture. No guessing. No confusion. Just clarity. And that clarity is deadly. A strike like this is a chain. The sensor finds movement. The pilot confirms. The weapons officer programs the fuse. If one link fails, everyone pays. This is the most dangerous part. From tens of miles away, the targeting pod points like a finger. A human shape where no one thought to look. The jet stays quiet, drops low, and delivers a punch that ends the location forever. No warning. No second chance. And here's the advantage no mountain can escape. The carrier. Not just jets, but tankers. Sensors. Crews ready to launch again, and again, and again. If new targets appear, they refuel and go back. Pressure never stops. In the past, destroying a fortified site took weeks. Permissions. Ground troops. Heavy casualties. No. Hours. That speed closes the door on escape. And saves lives before boots ever touch the ground. But this isn't about carpet bombing. Precision is the goal. The Blue 109 doesn't flatten mountains. It penetrates them, detonates deep, collapses what matters, without destroying everything above it. Surgical, focused, final. There's another edge most people miss. Politics. A carrier doesn't need permission. It operates from the sea. Independent, mobile. Commanders can act, or wait, or disappear. That freedom changes everything. Real-time data flows from jet to carrier to command centers ashore. Minutes, not days. A group fleeing into a crevice can be spotted, marked, and erased. Before they find another place to hide. The enemy's window to adapt? Gone. But power always has consequences. Every strike reshapes behavior. It saves future lives. And forces enemies to evolve. That's why what happens after the blast matters just as much. And now, the stakes jump. Because this kind of warfare isn't staying in one place. The war on drugs in Venezuela is intensifying. No more symbolic shows of force. Now it's precision. Drones. Elite raids. Satellite-guided weapons. And something far bigger. Cartel compounds once thought untouchable are disappearing. Which raises a terrifying question. What happens when the most powerful conventional bomb on Earth enters the fight? They call it the mother of all bombs. The GBU-43. Over 21,000 pounds of controlled destruction. So large it's pushed out the back of a special operations aircraft. And when it hits, the ground doesn't just shake. It collapses. It was first used against tunnel networks in Afghanistan. Caves erased. Air crushed outward with unstoppable force. Now imagine that power aimed at cartel strongholds. What would survive? And what wouldn't? Because if one bomb can erase a mountain base, what does that mean for anyone who thought terrain made them safe? And here's the final truth most people never consider. If this is what's used now, what's being saved for later? The ground didn't just shake. It collapsed. A single explosion turned an entire mountainside into a grave, and the world instantly understood one thing. This was not a normal bomb. But here's what no one tells you. That blast wasn't just meant to kill. Deep in Afghanistan, ISIS-K thought they were untouchable. Underground tunnels. Hidden chambers. Secret weapon routes. A fortress carved into rock. Safe. Silent. Invisible. Until something fell from the sky that changed the rules forever. And the ending of this story? It still scares military planners today. ISIS-K wasn't hiding in buildings. They were hiding inside the earth. Miles of tunnels. Weapons stored underground. Fighters moving unseen. Traditional airstrikes couldn't reach them. Ground troops would bleed for every inch. And this is where everything changes. The U.S. military chose a weapon never used in combat before. A bomb so large it needed its own nickname. The MOAB. The mother of all bombs. Not nuclear, but close enough to make the world hold its breath. This wasn't just an attack. It was a message. When the Moab detonated, the blast didn't just spread outward. It poured into the tunnels. Through passages. Into hidden rooms. Stealing oxygen. Crushing lungs. Erasing everything inside. At least 94 ISIS fighters vanished in seconds. The shockwave was felt across the region. And everyone watching knew. This was a show of force. The explosion echoed far beyond Afghanistan. Newsrooms exploded next. Screens lit up worldwide. Analysts whispered the same thing. This isn't only for ISIS. North Korea noticed. Other adversaries noticed. Because the real weapon wasn't the blast. It was the warning. But here's the question no one dares ask. What if that firepower wasn't used on terrorists? What if it was aimed somewhere else entirely? Drug cartels build tunnels too. Hidden labs. Underground factories. Warehouses buried from satellites. Just like terror groups. Imagine one strike. One blast. An entire cartel empire erased in seconds. Fear would flip instantly. Secrecy would mean nothing. And this is the most dangerous part. Many people confuse the Moab with another monster. The massive ordnance penetrator. They sound similar. They're not. One smothers everything above ground. The other drills deep. Different designs. Different nightmares. And the Moab was never meant to last. After September 11th, the U.S. was desperate. Afghanistan was unfamiliar. The enemy unpredictable. So the military took a risk. They built the Moab fast. No long program. No perfection. A crash project. Pieces pulled from existing tech. Even ideas borrowed from Soviet ICBMs. Only 15 were ever made. It was tested. Then shelved. For over a decade. Waiting. Silent. Until ISIS forced the question. Are we willing to use it? The answer came in one explosion. Today, restarting Moab production would be a nightmare. Parts don't exist anymore. Costs would explode. Designs would need rebuilding. Experts say it likely won't happen. But maybe that doesn't matter. Because the Moab already did its job. This bomb was never just about destruction. It was about psychology. About telling enemies, we can build the unimaginable, fast. Retired generals admit it openly. Wide area damage. And wide area fear. The Moab proved something terrifying. Sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't the one you use often. It's the one you might use next. And now the question lingers. If this was just a message, what message is being prepared right now? They didn't choose the biggest bomb. They chose the scariest one. And that decision changed everything. What the public thinks is America's most powerful bomb isn't even the most dangerous. Stay till the end, because the final truth about this weapon was never meant to be public. Deep inside enemy territory, caves, tunnels, fighters hiding underground. Commanders had two options. One bomb that burrows. One bomb that erases everything above ground. Only one could be used. Only one was available. And only one would send a message no enemy could ignore. But here's what no one tells you. Back in the early 2000s, Air Force General T. Michael "Buzz" Mosley had already seen this dilemma before. As commander of U.S. Central Command Air Forces, he knew these weapons weren't unlimited. They were rare. Almost irreplaceable. So when ISIS fighters disappeared into tunnel networks, the decision wasn't about size. It was about effect. The MOAB doesn't dig. It doesn't knock politely. It detonates above the ground. A massive air blast. A rolling shockwave. Pressure so violent it crushes lungs and collapses tunnels without ever touching concrete. It doesn't need precision. It needs space. And once it explodes, everything inside that radius simply stops existing. This is where everything changes. Now here's the twist. The MOP, the massive ordnance penetrator, is actually bigger. Heavier. 33,000 pounds. Built to punch through reinforced concrete. Built to hunt command bunkers buried deep underground. So why wasn't that the weapon of choice? Because this mission wasn't about depth. It was about fear. The Moab weighs nearly 22,000 pounds. But inside it, almost 18,000 pounds of high explosives. That's the force of 11 tons of TNT. The MOP carries far less explosive power. Because its strength isn't the blast. It's the moment after impact. Different weapons. Different nightmares. Here's something most people miss. The MOAB isn't dropped by a stealth bomber. It's pushed out of the back of a C-130 cargo plane. Slow. Loud. Deliberate. While the MOP, GPS guided, carried by the B-2 Spirit. Invisible until it's too late. One announces itself. The other never does. And that matters. When the Moab was dropped in Afghanistan in 2017, it wasn't reckless. It was calculated. Mosley later explained. Commanders spent enormous time studying blast radius, terrain, collateral risk. Despite its size, the Moab was the cleaner option. Big enough to collapse tunnels. Controlled enough to avoid wider destruction. And that's the paradox. Now here's where it gets unsettling. This bomb, one of the most powerful non-nuclear weapons ever built, costs around $170,000. That's less than many cruise missiles. Sounds impossible, right? But there's a catch. That number isn't a real procurement cost. There was no traditional program. No massive contract. The Moab was built in-house. Using spare materials. Leftover casings. Metal already sitting in storage. A weapon assembled not by design, but by necessity. Almost improvised. And that's why its true price doesn't exist on paper. One piece made all the difference. Grid fins. Lattice-style fins that let this massive bomb steer itself. Accuracy within 8 meters. For something this size, that's insane. A small company in Alabama, Dynetics, was quietly brought in. The first contract, just $35,000. That tiny investment turned chaos into control. Here's what's still classified. How many Moabs exist? Officials won't say. Most estimates around 15. Where are they stored? Unknown. Upgraded? Maybe. Even the Air Force admits they're not sure what costs were fully included. Because this weapon was never meant to be normal. The MOAB isn't just explosive power. It's psychological warfare. A single detonation that says, "We don't need nuclear weapons to end this." The MOP sends a different message. There is nowhere deep enough to hide. Fear. Or inevitability. And here's the final thought they never address. The most powerful bomb America owns isn't the one that's biggest. It's the one they haven't used yet. So ask yourself, if these were the weapons they were willing to show the world, what's still waiting in the shadows? The ground didn't just shake. It collapsed. A single bomb erased caves, tunnels, and the confidence of everyone hiding underground. But here's what no one tells you. This weapon was never meant to be used often. So why risk it now? It's called the mother of all bombs. Cheap. Rare. Terrifying. Dropped once, and then almost vanished from the battlefield. Until a new question began spreading through military circles. What happens when this bomb meets enemies who live underground? Stay till the end, because the final truth changes everything. America's enemies learned a lesson long ago. If you can't fight above ground, disappear below it. Caves, tunnels, reinforced chambers. Safe from drones. Safe from missiles. Or so they thought. This bomb doesn't cost millions. Not even close. About $170,000. Less than many guided missiles. Yet its blast can flatten entire underground networks in seconds. But here's the risk. America doesn't have many of them. These bombs weren't mass-produced. They were built quietly. In the early 2000s. From spare parts. For one war. Used too many, and there are no replacements waiting. Critics asked a dangerous question. Why use one giant bomb, when a B-52 bomber can drop dozens? 50 bombs. 750 pounds each. Together, they can match, or exceed, the same destruction. So why gamble everything on one drop? This is where everything changes. Because this bomb isn't about numbers. It's about psychology. One blast. One message. No warning. No escape. Retired generals revealed the truth later. The decision isn't about firepower alone. It's about timing. Right location. Right enemy concentration. Right moment. When everything lines up. You don't send many bombs. You send the bomb. Now imagine this weapon aimed at cartel tunnel networks. Drug labs buried deep underground. Miles of reinforced passageways. Hidden from satellites. Hidden from raids. But not hidden from pressure waves that crush lungs and collapse Earth. This isn't just destruction. It's fear traveling faster than shockwaves. One detonation. And suddenly every tunnel feels like a coffin. Every underground hideout becomes a trap. What would you do if the ground itself turned against you? And this is the most dangerous part. Once you use a weapon like this, you can't undo the message it sends. Enemies adapt. Lines get crossed. Escalation becomes inevitable. The mother of all bombs was never about winning wars. It was about ending belief. The belief that hiding underground means safety. And once that belief dies, everything changes. But here's the question no one wants to answer. If this bomb is already considered rare, what weapon replaces it when even this isn't enough?